The Nevada desert stretched endlessly in every direction as I watched the taillights of my own Honda Civic disappear into the darkness. My sister Melody sat behind the wheel of the car I had bought with 7 years of waitress tips, while my parents followed in their SUV. The temperature was dropping fast and my phone showed no signal bars. 3 miles from the nearest cell tower according to the last road sign I remembered. The silence was deafening, except for the wind whistling through the sagebrush. My mother's final words echoed in my mind. "The car belongs to the family now, Kieran. You should have just given her the keys when we asked nicely." 7 years ago, when I turned 21, I made a promise to myself. I would save every single tip I earned at Rosie's Diner in Bakersfield until I could buy a reliable car with cash. No loans, no monthly payments, just honest money earned through honest work. Every morning at 5:30, I walked the 4 miles from my studio apartment to the diner, rain or shine. In the blazing California summer heat, I trudged along the shoulder of Highway 99, sweat soaking through my uniform before my shift even started. My parents, Janet and Roger, had always struggled financially. Dad's construction work was seasonal and unpredictable, dependent on weather, and the whims of contractors who often paid late or not at all. Mom worked retail at a discount clothing store, earning minimum wage, while dealing with demanding customers and a manager who cut hours whenever corporate demanded better profit margins. Growing up, we lived paycheck to paycheck, sometimes not even making it that far. My younger sister Melody was 3 years younger, but had always been the center of attention in our household. She possessed a natural charm that could convince anyone to do anything for her. When she was 16 and wanted designer jeans that cost $200, she would cry until Mom found a way to scrape together the money. When she crashed her first car at 17, Dad worked overtime for 3 months to buy her another one. It seemed like every crisis in Melody's life became a family emergency that required everyone else's sacrifice. I learned early that the only person I could count on was myself. While Melody borrowed money from our parents and never repaid it, I worked double shifts on weekends and holidays. While she partied with friends and dated different guys every month, I studied for my GED and dreamed of something better than our small town offered. The tips I earned came in 1s and 5s, occasionally a 10 or 20, from a generous customer who appreciated good service. I kept every dollar in a coffee can hidden in my closet, counting it obsessively and watching the total grow painfully slowly. By my 25th birthday, I had saved $18,000. By 27, the amount reached $28,000. Finally, 3 months ago, I had enough to walk into Honda of Bakersfield and pay cash for a 2018 Civic with only 37,000 miles on the odometer. The salesman looked surprised when I pulled out a bank envelope filled with $100 bills. The car was registered solely in my name, insurance paid from my own bank account, every document bearing only my signature. For the first time in my adult life, I had something that was completely mine. No one could take it away. No one could make demands on it, and no one could guilt me into sharing it. The freedom was intoxicating. I could drive to work in 8 minutes instead of walking for an hour and 20 minutes. I could take weekend trips to the coast or visit friends in other cities. I could apply for better jobs that required reliable transportation. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. Melody's beat-up 2009 Corolla finally died on Interstate 5, stranding her between Bakersfield and Los Angeles. The engine had been burning oil for months, the transmission slipped constantly, and the air conditioning had stopped working 2 summers ago. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before it gave up completely. When the tow truck brought the Corolla to a junkyard, the mechanic offered $50 for scrap metal. That evening, my parents invited me to dinner at their house. Nothing unusual there. We had family dinners every few weeks. But when I arrived, Melody was sobbing dramatically at the kitchen table, while Mom rubbed her shoulders and Dad paced back and forth, looking agitated. The conversation quickly turned to my Honda parked in their driveway. When Hashintaimi Kieran Honey, Mom began in her sweetest voice. Melody really needs transportation right now. She has that important job interview next week, and you know how hard it's been for her to find work. I knew Melody had been unemployed for 8 months ever since she quit her last job at a boutique because the manager didn't appreciate her creative input. Before that, she had worked at a coffee shop for 6 weeks, a dental office for 3 months, and a yoga studio for exactly 2 weeks. Her employment history read like a tour of every entry-level position in Bakersfield. "I'm sorry about her car," I said carefully, "but I need mine for work and school." I had recently enrolled in evening business classes at the community college, finally pursuing the education I had always wanted. Dad cleared his throat. "Son, family comes first. You've always been responsible, and we appreciate that. But sometimes you need to help your sister out. I can help by giving her rides sometimes," I offered, "but I can't just hand over my car." Melody's sobs grew louder. "You're being so selfish, Kieran. I knew I couldn't count on you. You never cared about anyone but yourself." The guilt tactics were familiar, but something felt different this time. My parents exchanged a look I couldn't interpret, and Dad's jaw was set in a way that meant he had already made a decision. Mom kept glancing at her phone, typing quick messages to someone. "Let's be reasonable here," Mom said. "You could share the car, take turns using it. That way everyone gets what they need." "Share," I repeated. "It's my car, Mom. I saved for 7 years to buy it." "Money isn't everything," Dad said firmly. "This family has always pulled together when times got tough. Your sister needs help, and you're in a position to provide it." The conversation continued for another hour, growing more heated as my refusal became clear. Finally, Mom suggested we all take a drive to clear the air and talk things through like adults. She insisted that fresh air and a change of scenery would help us find a compromise that worked for everyone. Looking back, I should have recognized the signs. The way Dad kept checking his watch, the way Mom insisted on a specific route that would take us through remote areas, the way Melody suddenly stopped crying and started checking her reflection in her phone camera. But I was focused on defending my position and didn't notice the careful choreography unfolding around me. As we prepared to leave, I watched Melody slide behind the wheel of my Honda while I climbed into the back seat of my parents' SUV. She adjusted the mirrors with familiar ease, as if she had been driving it for months instead of just that evening. Her tears had dried up, completely replaced by a small smile she thought I couldn't see. That's when I realized this dinner hadn't been about finding a compromise at all. It had been about something much more calculated. The route Dad chose took us away from Bakersfield and into the desert hills of Nevada along increasingly remote highways, where cell phone coverage grew spotty and then disappeared entirely. As the miles passed, the conversation in the SUV grew more aggressive. Mom and Dad took turns lecturing me about family loyalty and personal sacrifice, while I watched my Honda following behind us through the rear window. Melody was talking animatedly on her phone despite the lack of signal, and I began to suspect she was just pretending to make calls. When Dad suddenly pulled over on a deserted stretch of highway, claiming he heard a strange noise from the engine, my stomach dropped. We were at least 50 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by nothing but darkness and the distant silhouettes of mountains. Melody immediately pulled my Honda up behind us and got out, leaving the engine running and the headlights on. That's when they told me the real plan. I would be staying here until I learned to put family first. Melody needed the car more than I did, and they were tired of my selfishness. If I truly loved my family, I would sacrifice for them the way they had supposedly sacrificed for me. The conversation I thought we were having about sharing had actually been an ultimatum, with only one acceptable answer. When I refused again and started walking back toward my Honda, Dad grabbed my phone and smashed it against a rock before I could react. Mom pulled out her own phone and started taking pictures of my shocked expression, laughing, as if my distress was the funniest thing she had ever seen. Melody climbed back into my car and locked the doors, grinning at me through the window. "You'll change your mind after a night out here," Dad called, as he climbed back into the SUV. "The car belongs to the family now, son. The sooner you accept that, the sooner this can all be over." As their taillights disappeared into the desert night, I found myself alone, for the first time in my life, with nowhere to turn and no way to call for help. The temperature was already dropping, and I could hear coyotes howling somewhere in the darkness. But as I stood there watching my family abandon me on a deserted highway, I also felt something unexpected relief. For 28 years, I had tried to earn their love and approval. Tonight, they had finally shown me exactly what that love was worth. The silence after my family drove away was unlike anything I had ever experienced. No traffic sounds, no city lights, no human presence for miles in any direction. The Nevada desert at night was a void, filled only with wind and the distant calls of animals I couldn't identify. Stars appeared overhead in numbers that seemed impossible clearer and brighter than they ever looked in Bakersfield. Under different circumstances, it might have been beautiful. The temperature was dropping fast. I had worn only a light polo shirt and khakis to dinner, thinking we would be inside a restaurant or my parents' house all evening. Now I was facing what felt like the coldest night of my life, with no shelter and no way to call for help. My phone lay in pieces on the asphalt where Dad had destroyed it, the screen shattered, and the battery compartment exposed to the desert air. I started walking in the direction my family had driven, hoping to find a gas station or truck stop before hypothermia set in. But after 20 minutes of stumbling along the dark highway, I realized how futile that plan was. The last road sign I remembered had indicated 12 miles to the next town. In dress shoes and light clothing with no water and no flashlight, I would never make it before sunrise. Even if I did survive the walk, I had no money for a phone call and no identification to prove who I was. The sound of coyotes grew closer, and I remembered reading somewhere that they were more dangerous in packs. I had no weapon, no fire, and no high ground to retreat to if they decided I looked like easy prey. Every shadow seemed to move independently, and every sound made me jump. This was exactly what my parents had planned. They wanted me scared, desperate, and completely dependent on their mercy. I thought about the elaborate deception they had orchestrated. The fake family dinner. The carefully chosen route through areas with no cell service. The way Melody had stopped crying the moment she got behind the wheel of my car. They had planned this for days, maybe weeks. While I thought we were having a disagreement about sharing transportation, they were plotting to strand me in the desert until I surrendered everything I had worked for. The cruelest part was how much they had enjoyed it. Mom taking pictures of my shock and fear, Dad lecturing me about family values while destroying my phone, Melody grinning as she drove away in the car I had sacrificed 7 years to earn. They hadn't just wanted my Honda. They had wanted to humiliate me and prove that I had no choice but to submit to their demands. As I walked back toward where they had left me, hoping to find some shelter from the wind, I spotted something metallic, glinting in the starlight about 20 feet off the highway. Investigation revealed an old roadside emergency kit, probably dropped by another stranded motorist months or years earlier. The plastic case was cracked and sun-faded, but the contents were still intact: a reflective emergency blanket, 3 road flares, a small first aid kit, and most importantly, a battery-powered emergency radio. The radio was an older model, with a hand crank for charging designed for camping and natural disasters. When I turned it on, static filled the night air, but gradually I found a clear frequency. The Nevada Highway Patrol used a public safety channel that allowed citizens to report emergencies even without cell phone service. My hands shook as I pressed the talk button and identified myself as a stranded motorist in need of assistance. The voice that responded belonged to Officer Martinez, who sounded alert despite the late hour. He asked for my location, which I could only describe in vague terms, based on the last landmarks I remembered. He asked about my situation, and I found myself explaining not just that I was stranded, but that my own family had deliberately abandoned me after stealing my car. Even saying the words out loud, the story sounded incredible. Officer Martinez took detailed notes about my Honda's license plate number, registration information, and insurance details. He asked about any medical conditions or immediate dangers, and I mentioned the dropping temperature and the coyote sounds. But when he ran my license plate through the police database, he discovered something that made me feel sick to my stomach. "Sir," he said carefully, "your vehicle was reported as borrowed without permission about an hour ago by someone named Janet Morrison. She claims her son took the family car without asking and may be driving recklessly. Do you know anything about that?" Janet Morrison was my mother's full name. While I sat shivering in the desert, she had called the police and filed a false report claiming I had stolen my own car. If I was arrested for auto theft, I would have no credibility when I told authorities about being abandoned. My parents weren't just trying to take my car, they were trying to frame me for a crime. "Officer Martinez," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need to tell you something important. That woman who filed the report is my mother, and she's lying. I can prove the car is mine." Over the next hour, as I waited for rescue and fought off the effects of cold, I explained the entire situation to Officer Martinez. He listened without interruption as I described 7 years of saving tips, the car purchased 3 months ago, and tonight's elaborate betrayal. He asked for details about my employment at Rosie's Diner, my insurance policy, and the bank where I had withdrawn the cash for the purchase. "This is a complicated situation," he said finally. "But there are some things you should know. Your sister Melody Morrison is wanted for questioning in a credit card fraud investigation in California. She's been using stolen credit card information to make purchases, and we've been trying to locate her for 3 weeks." The news hit me like a physical blow. Melody wasn't just unemployed and irresponsible. She was a criminal. Her constant need for money hadn't been about bad luck or poor choices. She had been stealing from innocent people and using our parents to cover for her crimes. The job interview she claimed to need my car for was probably just another lie to hide whatever illegal activity she was planning. "There's more," Officer Martinez continued. "Your parents are listed as possible accomplices in the investigation. They've been making cash deposits that correspond with your sister's fraudulent purchases. We think they've been helping her launder money through your father's construction business." Everything finally made sense. The family's chronic financial problems despite both parents working. The way Melody always had money for expensive clothes and electronics, even while unemployed. The secretive phone calls and the way conversations stopped when I entered rooms. My parents weren't just enabling her manipulation, they were active participants in her crimes. As dawn approached, I huddled under the emergency blanket and processed what I had learned. My family wasn't just dysfunctional, it was criminal. And somehow my refusal to hand over my car had stumbled into the middle of a federal investigation. Officer Martinez promised that help was on the way, but he also warned me that the situation was much more serious than a simple family dispute. The desert sunrise painted the mountains in shades of gold and purple, beautiful and harsh at the same time. I had survived the night, but I was beginning to realize that my real ordeal was just beginning. Somewhere out there, my family was driving toward Las Vegas in stolen cars, probably planning to sell my Honda and use the money for legal fees. They had no idea that law enforcement was already 3 steps ahead of them. Officer Martinez found me just as the sun cleared the eastern mountains, bringing welcome warmth to my stiff and aching body. I had spent the coldest hours wrapped in the reflective blanket doing jumping jacks and push-ups to keep my blood moving, while listening to coyotes hunt somewhere in the darkness. When his patrol car appeared on the horizon, I felt a relief so profound that tears came to my eyes. He was a compact man in his 40s with kind eyes and the weathered face of someone who had seen every type of human crisis. He brought coffee in a thermos, a wool blanket from his trunk, and news that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. While I warmed my hands around the coffee cup, he explained that the credit card fraud investigation involving Melody had been ongoing for 8 months. Your sister and her boyfriend Derek have been running a sophisticated operation, he said, consulting notes on his phone. They steal credit card information from restaurant customers, then use fake IDs to make purchases at electronics stores and jewelry shops. The stolen merchandise gets sold online, and the money gets deposited into accounts controlled by your parents. According to Officer Martinez, the scheme had netted over $200,000 in fraudulent charges across 3 states. Melody would go on dates to upscale restaurants, distract her companions while copying credit card information, then pass the data to Derek for manufacturing fake cards. They had targeted doctors, lawyers, and business executives, people who might not notice fraudulent charges for days or weeks. Your parents' construction business has been the perfect front, he continued. They create fake invoices for work that was never performed, then deposit the stolen money as if it came from legitimate customers. On paper, they've been running the most successful construction company in Bakersfield. The revelation explained so many things that had puzzled me over the years. Why my parents always seemed to have money for Melody's emergencies, despite claiming to be broke. Why Dad's construction business suddenly became more profitable, even though he was working fewer hours. Why they had always discouraged me from getting involved in family finances, claiming it was too complicated for me to understand. Officer Martinez showed me printed bank records that prosecutors had obtained through court orders. Regular deposits ranging from $5,000 to $20,000, always made within days of Melody's fraudulent shopping sprees. My parents weren't just victims of their daughter's manipulation. They were active partners in her criminal enterprise. The plan to steal your car makes more sense now, he said. They need cash for legal defense attorneys, and selling a clean vehicle registered in someone else's name would provide quick money with minimal risk. They probably figured you would eventually forgive them, especially if they made it seem like a family emergency. As we talked, Officer Martinez received updates on his radio about my family's location. They had checked into a casino hotel in Las Vegas around 4 a.m, paying cash for adjoining rooms. Security cameras showed them laughing and celebrating in the lobby, apparently pleased with their successful plan. Melody had been spotted using her phone to take selfies with my Honda in the hotel parking garage. There's something else you need to know, Officer Martinez said carefully. Derek, your sister's boyfriend, is actually an undercover FBI agent. His name is Derek Chen, and he's been building this case against your sister for 3 months. Everything she's told him, every crime they've committed together, every conversation about involving your parents has been recorded. The news was so shocking that I almost dropped my coffee cup. Melody's boyfriend, the man she had been dating and committing crimes with, was actually a federal agent gathering evidence against her. Every romantic dinner, every intimate conversation, every moment of trust had been part of an elaborate sting operation. Agent Chen has been waiting for the right moment to make arrests, Officer Martinez explained. Your family's plan to steal your car and strand you in the desert provided the perfect opportunity. Now they're facing federal charges for fraud, money laundering, false imprisonment, and filing false police reports. I thought about the strange look my parents had exchanged during dinner, the way they had insisted on a specific route through the desert, the careful timing of their plan. They had been so focused on their scheme to break my resistance that they had walked directly into a federal trap. While they thought they were teaching me a lesson about family loyalty, they were actually providing evidence of their willingness to commit multiple felonies. Agent Chen watched the whole thing happen, Officer Martinez said. He's been following your family since they left Bakersfield, documenting everything with audio and video equipment. The FBI has recordings of your parents planning to strand you, your mother filing the false police report, and your sister laughing about leaving you to freeze in the desert. The scope of the surveillance was incredible. While I had been shivering under an emergency blanket and fighting off hypothermia, federal agents had been watching my family's every move from multiple vehicles. They had photographs of Mom taking pictures of my distress audio recordings of Dad destroying my phone and video footage of Melody driving away in my stolen car. Officer Martinez explained that my cooperation would be crucial for the prosecution's case. My testimony about tonight's events, combined with Agent Chen's undercover work, would provide overwhelming evidence of my family's criminal conspiracy. The false police report my mother had filed would be easy to disprove using my employment records, bank statements, and the Honda's registration documents. Your sister has no idea that Derek is law enforcement, he said. Right now, she thinks she's won a complete victory. She has your car, your parents' support, and a boyfriend who she believes will help her sell the stolen vehicle. But actually, she's sitting in a hotel room surrounded by federal agents. As we drove toward Las Vegas, where I would give my statement to FBI investigators, Officer Martinez shared more details about the case. Melody and Derek had been targeting wealthy customers at expensive restaurants throughout California and Nevada. They would follow couples to romantic dinners, wait for the man to pay with a credit card. Then Melody would bump into him accidentally, while Derek used a hidden camera to photograph the card information. The credit card data would be sold to manufacturers of fake cards who would create perfect replicas within hours. Derek would then use the fake cards to purchase expensive electronics jewelry and gift cards at stores throughout the region. The merchandise would be resold online at a fraction of retail value, with the money flowing through my parents' fake construction invoices. Your parents were essential to the operation, Officer Martinez explained. Without their business accounts and tax identification numbers, your sister couldn't have laundered the money. They weren't just covering for her crimes, they were making the crimes possible. The highway stretched ahead of us as we approached Las Vegas, where neon signs advertised 24-hour gambling and entertainment. Somewhere in that city, my family was sleeping peacefully in expensive hotel rooms, believing they had successfully broken my spirit and claimed ownership of my car. They had no idea that their criminal enterprise was about to collapse around them. I thought about the 7 years I had spent saving tips at Rosie's Diner, believing that hard work and sacrifice would eventually pay off. In a way, it had just not the way I expected. My refusal to surrender the car I had earned honestly had exposed my family's dishonesty and led to justice for their many victims. Sometimes doing the right thing brings consequences you never imagined. But that doesn't make it any less right. The FBI field office in Las Vegas buzzed with activity, even in the early morning hours. Agent Sarah Williams, the case supervisor for the credit card fraud investigation, greeted me with professional sympathy and immediately offered medical attention for my desert exposure. A paramedic checked my blood pressure and temperature, confirming mild hypothermia, but no permanent damage from my night in the cold. Mr. Morrison, Somfredi. Agent Williams began as we settled into an interview room. What your family did to you last night constitutes several federal crimes. False imprisonment conspiracy to commit theft, filing false police reports, and intimidation of a potential witness. We've been building a case against them for months, but your testimony will be crucial for prosecution. She showed me surveillance photos taken over the past 3 months, documenting my family's criminal activities in shocking detail. Melody and Derek at expensive restaurants secretly photographing credit cards. My parents making large cash deposits at banks throughout Central California. Shopping sprees at electronics stores where Derek used fraudulent cards to purchase thousands of dollars worth of merchandise. Your sister has been the public face of the operation, Agent Williams explained, but your parents have been the financial backbone. Without their construction business accounts, the money laundering would have been impossible. They've been active participants from the beginning. The evidence was overwhelming and heartbreaking. Bank records showed that my parents had deposited over $300,000 in stolen money through their construction business over the past year. They had used some of the funds to pay legitimate business expenses, making the fraud harder to detect. But most of the money had been transferred to accounts controlled by Melody and Derek. Agent Chen has been undercover for 4 months. She continued posing as Derek Liu, an electronics reseller with connections to overseas buyers. Your sister believed she had found the perfect boyfriend, charming, successful, and completely willing to help with her criminal schemes. Agent Williams showed me Derek's real FBI credentials and photographs from his previous assignments. He was actually Agent Derek Chen, a 10-year veteran of financial crimes investigations, with expertise in identity theft and money laundering operations. His undercover work had exposed not just my family's crimes, but connections to a larger criminal network operating throughout the Western United States. "The plan to steal your car was the final piece we needed," she said. "Your sister needed quick cash for legal expenses, but she didn't realize we already knew about the credit card fraud. When she convinced your parents to help her take your vehicle, she provided evidence of their willingness to commit violent crimes to support her activities." The surveillance recordings were devastating. My mother's voice on audio tapes laughing about leaving me to learn some manners in the desert. My father discussing how to disable my phone so I couldn't call for help. Melody boasting to Derek about how she would break her brother's spirit and force me to surrender everything I owned. "Your family checked into the Luxor Hotel around 4 this morning," Agent Williams said, consulting her notes. "They paid cash for adjoining suites and immediately began celebrating what they thought was their victory. Agent Chen is with them now, maintaining his cover while we prepare for arrests." She showed me live surveillance feed from hidden cameras in the hotel. My parents were asleep in one room, while Melody and Derek sat on a balcony overlooking the Las Vegas Strip. Even in the grainy video, I could see Melody gesturing excitedly as she talked, probably describing how she had manipulated our parents into abandoning me in the desert. "Agent Chen reported that your sister is planning to sell your car to a contact in Los Angeles," Agent Williams continued. "She believes she's found a fence who will pay cash and ask no questions. Actually, the buyer is another undercover agent, and the transaction will provide additional evidence of receiving stolen property." The complexity of the federal operation was staggering. Multiple undercover agents, months of surveillance, financial records from dozens of banks, and cooperation with local police departments across 3 states. My family's amateur criminal enterprise had stumbled into the middle of a sophisticated law enforcement investigation. "There's something else you need to know," Agent Williams said carefully. "During our investigation, we discovered that your sister has been stealing from your parents as well. She's been using their banking information to fund a gambling addiction that they don't know about." She showed me casino records documenting Melody's visits to Indian casinos throughout California and Nevada. Over the past 6 months, she had lost over $50,000 on slot machines and table games, money she had stolen from my parents' accounts using forged checks and unauthorized electronic transfers. "Your parents thought they were helping their daughter build a better life," Agent Williams explained. "They didn't realize she was using their business accounts to feed a serious gambling addiction. In some ways, they're victims as well as perpetrators." The revelation complicated my feelings about the night's events. While my parents had participated willingly in the credit card fraud and the plan to strand me in the desert, they had also been manipulated by Melody's lies and addiction. She had convinced them that her need for money was about survival and opportunity, not about feeding slot machines in casino backrooms. Agent Williams explained the legal process that would unfold over the coming days. Melody would be arrested on federal charges, including conspiracy identity theft, money laundering, and fraud. My parents would face similar charges, but prosecutors might offer reduced sentences in exchange for their cooperation against larger criminal networks. "Agent Chen has identified connections between your sister's operation and organized crime groups in Los Angeles and Las Vegas," she said. The fake credit cards were manufactured by criminals with ties to international trafficking organizations. Your family's case is part of a much larger investigation. As the morning progressed, I gave detailed statements about my family's history, the events leading up to last night's betrayal, and everything I knew about their financial activities. FBI agents photographed the damage to my phone, documented my desert survival story, and recorded my account of the false police report my mother had filed. Your employer at Rosie's Diner has been very supportive, Agent Williams noted. When we contacted the restaurant to verify your employment history, the manager offered to provide character references and testified that you've been a model employee for 7 years. She also mentioned that several coworkers suspected your family was taking advantage of you. The support from my workplace was unexpected and touching. People I had worked with for years had apparently noticed the financial strain I was under, always walking to work and never having money for anything beyond basic necessities. They had seen how hard I worked and how little I seemed to have to show for it. We're prepared to offer you witness protection if necessary. Agent Williams said, but we don't believe your family poses any physical danger to you once they're in custody. Your cooperation is voluntary, but it would be invaluable for ensuring justice for all the victims of their crimes. I agreed without hesitation to testify against my family. The evidence of their criminal activities was overwhelming, and their willingness to abandon me in a life-threatening situation had destroyed any remaining loyalty I felt toward them. They had chosen money and manipulation over love and honesty, and now they would face the consequences of that choice. As we prepared to leave for the hotel where the arrests would take place, Agent Williams handed me a victim advocate's business card and information about counseling services for families affected by crime. The legal process would take months or years to complete, but my role as a witness meant I would have support and protection throughout the proceedings. Your sister has no idea what's about to happen, she said as we walked toward the parking garage. Right now, she's probably planning how to spend the money from selling your car. In about an hour, she's going to discover that her perfect boyfriend is a federal agent and her criminal enterprise is completely destroyed. The Luxor Hotel's pyramid shape dominated the southern end of the Las Vegas Strip, its black glass exterior reflecting the desert sun like an obsidian monument to excess. FBI vehicles surrounded the building, discreetly unmarked cars and vans, positioned to prevent any escape attempts when the arrests began. Agent Williams explained the tactical plan as we waited in a command vehicle parked across the street from the main entrance. Agent Chen has been in contact with your sister since dawn, she said, monitoring radio communications from the surveillance team. She's planning to meet the supposed car buyer at 10 this morning in the hotel parking garage. When she attempts to complete the transaction, we'll move in for arrests. Through high-powered binoculars, I could see my Honda parked on the third level of the parking structure, exactly where Melody had left it after checking into the hotel. FBI technicians had already examined the vehicle, documenting fingerprints and any evidence of tampering. Despite everything my family had done, seeing my car again brought a surge of emotion I hadn't expected. Your parents are still asleep. Agent Williams continued checking updates from the surveillance team. Agent Chen reports that your sister has been awake all night, planning how to spend the money from selling your car. She's talking about paying off gambling debts and funding a new criminal enterprise in another state. The scope of Melody's delusions was breathtaking. Even after committing multiple felonies and abandoning her own brother in the desert, she was already planning her next set of crimes. She had learned nothing from the danger she was in and felt no remorse for the pain she had caused innocent people. Agent Chen's voice came through the radio, speaking in coded language to avoid arousing Melody's suspicion. He was maintaining his cover as Derek the electronics fence, expressing enthusiasm about the car purchase while secretly coordinating with federal agents positioned throughout the hotel. Every word of their conversation was being recorded as evidence. Your sister just told Agent Chen that her family supported her decision to take your car, Agent Williams reported. She's describing how her parents helped her teach you a lesson about putting family first. She genuinely believes she was justified in stranding you in the desert. The radio crackled with updates from various surveillance teams. My parents had finally awakened and were ordering room service breakfast, apparently in no hurry to check out of their expensive suite. They were discussing plans for a vacation to Mexico, funded by money from selling my Honda, and continuing their credit card fraud operation. Agent Chen is wearing a wire that captures audio and video, Agent Williams explained. Everything your family says and does this morning will be admissible evidence in federal court. Their own words will convict them more effectively than any testimony from witnesses. I listened to my sister's voice through the surveillance equipment, cheerful and animated, as she described her plans for the money from my car. She wanted to pay off $20,000 in gambling debts, buy new clothes and jewelry, and fund a move to Las Vegas, where she could continue stealing credit card information from casino customers. She's telling Agent Chen about her gambling addiction, Agent Williams noted with surprise. Most criminals try to hide their motivations, but your sister seems proud of her lifestyle. She's describing casino visits as if they were legitimate business trips. The conversation was damning evidence of Melody's complete lack of remorse or understanding about the seriousness of her crimes. She talked about victim families as if they were obstacles to overcome rather than people whose lives she had damaged. She described stealing my car as a necessary step in asserting her dominance over our family. At exactly 10 in the morning, Agent Chen contacted the surveillance team to confirm that Melody was ready to meet the supposed car buyer. She had dressed carefully for the occasion, wearing designer clothes purchased with stolen credit card funds and carrying fake identification documents that Agent Chen had helped her obtain as part of his undercover role. All units prepare for arrest operation, Agent Williams announced into her radio. Subject is approaching the transaction location. Move in on my signal. I watched through binoculars as Melody walked confidently toward my Honda keys in hand and a bright smile on her face. She had no idea that FBI agents were positioned throughout the parking garage, documenting her every move with cameras and recording equipment. In her mind, she was about to complete the final step in her successful scheme to steal everything I had worked for. Agent Chen appeared from behind a concrete pillar, playing his role as the car buyer to perfection. He examined the Honda's exterior and interior, asking questions about its condition and history, while secretly filming evidence of Melody attempting to sell stolen property. Their conversation was friendly and businesslike, exactly what it would have been in a legitimate transaction. Subject has confirmed her intention to sell the stolen vehicle. Agent Williams reported to the arrest teams. She's accepting payment and preparing to transfer ownership. Execute arrest now. The parking garage erupted with activity as FBI agents emerged from hiding places throughout the structure. Melody's expression changed from confident satisfaction to shocked terror in the space of a heartbeat. Agent Chen identified himself and began reading her rights while other agents secured the scene and called for backup units. Derek, Melody's voice, carried clearly through the surveillance equipment. Derek, what's happening? Who are these people? My name is Special Agent Derek Chen, FBI, came his calm response. Melody Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and receiving stolen property. The arrests of my parents took place simultaneously in their hotel suite upstairs. I listened through radio communications as agents entered their room and found them eating breakfast in bathrobes, completely unprepared for the consequences of their criminal activities. Like Melody, they seemed genuinely shocked that law enforcement had discovered their operation. Male subject is asking for a lawyer, one of the arrest agents reported. Female subject is demanding to speak with her daughter. Both subjects appear confused about the charges and claim they thought their business activities were legitimate. Agent Williams shook her head as she listened to the radio traffic. Your parents really believed that helping your sister launder money was just family support. They didn't understand that they were active participants in a criminal conspiracy that victimized dozens of innocent people. Within 30 minutes, all three members of my family were in federal custody charged with crimes that could result in decades in prison. My Honda was secured as evidence, but Agent Williams assured me that it would be returned once the legal proceedings were complete. The fake identification documents and credit card manufacturing equipment found in their hotel rooms provided additional evidence of the scope of their criminal enterprise. Agent Chen's undercover work is complete, Agent Williams announced as the arrest teams cleared the scene. He'll testify at trial about everything your sister told him, including her plans to continue committing crimes and her complete lack of remorse for victimizing innocent families. As we drove away from the Luxor Hotel, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness that surprised me with its intensity. Justice was being served, and the criminals who had stolen from hardworking people were facing appropriate consequences. But they were also my family, people I had loved and trusted despite their flaws. The victims of their credit card fraud will be notified that arrests have been made, Agent Williams said. Many of those families lost thousands of dollars and spent months dealing with damaged credit and financial institutions. Your cooperation has helped ensure that justice will be served on their behalf. I thought about the restaurant customers who had trusted Melody enough to let her approach their tables, the business owners who had unknowingly sold merchandise to Derek using fraudulent cards, and the banks that had processed my parents' fake construction invoices. My family's crimes had damaged many lives beyond just mine. Agent Williams handed me a victim advocate's card and information about counseling services available to family members affected by criminal activities. The legal process would take months to complete, but psychological healing would take much longer. I had lost my family, but I had also escaped from a relationship built on manipulation and exploitation. Your testimony will be crucial for prosecution, she said as we reached the FBI field office. But you should know that your courage in refusing to surrender your car probably saved other families from becoming victims. Your sister was planning to expand her operation significantly. The federal courthouse in Las Vegas was a monument to justice, its marble columns and bronze fixtures conveying the weight and dignity of the law. 3 weeks after my family's arrest, I sat in the witness section preparing to testify about the night they abandoned me in the Nevada desert. FBI agents had prepared me extensively for this moment, but nothing could fully prepare someone for testifying against their own family. Melody sat at the defendant's table wearing an orange jumpsuit, her confident demeanor replaced by the hollow expression of someone who had finally understood the consequences of her actions. Her court-appointed attorney had advised her to accept a plea bargain, but she had refused, insisting that her family's support proved she had done nothing wrong. My parents occupied a separate table with their own legal representation, looking older and more fragile than I remembered. The public defender had convinced them to accept reduced charges in exchange for their testimony against Melody's larger criminal network, a decision that probably saved them from decades in federal prison. Agent Chen sat in the law enforcement section, no longer playing the role of Derek the electronics fence. His testimony the previous day had been devastating, documenting months of recorded conversations in which Melody had described her crimes in detail and expressed her intention to continue victimizing innocent families. The prosecution calls Kieran Morrison, announced District Attorney Rebecca Martinez, a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in financial crimes. I walked to the witness stand on unsteady legs, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth about the worst night of my life. Dia Martinez led me through my testimony, methodically establishing my employment history at Rosie's Diner, my 7 years of saving tips, and the purchase of my Honda Civic with legitimate funds. She showed the jury my bank records, employment documentation, and the car's registration, proving beyond doubt that I was the legal owner of the vehicle my family had stolen. "Mr. Morrison," she said gently, "please tell the jury about the evening of November 15th when your family invited you to dinner." I described the fake family meeting, the way my parents had manipulated me into joining them for a drive. and the carefully planned route through remote areas of Nevada. The jury listened intently as I explained how my phone was destroyed, how I was abandoned miles from any help, and how my mother had filed a false police report while I shivered in the desert. "How did you survive that night?" DA Martinez asked. "I found an emergency kit that someone had dropped," I replied. "It contained a radio that allowed me to contact the highway patrol." Officer Martinez responded and learned that my sister was wanted for credit card fraud. Melody's attorney objected repeatedly to my testimony, claiming that family disputes weren't federal crimes and that I was exaggerating the danger I had faced. But DA Martinez had evidence that contradicted every objection-recorded phone calls, surveillance footage, and Agent Chen's detailed documentation of my family's criminal planning. "Mr. Morrison, did your family express any remorse for abandoning you in life-threatening conditions?" "No," I answered. When Agent Chen recorded their conversations the next morning, they were laughing about it and planning how to spend money from selling my car. The surveillance recordings were played for the jury, my family's voices filling the courtroom as they celebrated what they thought was their successful scheme. Melody's laughter as she described leaving me to freeze. My parents discussing vacation plans funded by selling stolen property. Agent Chen's professional questioning that revealed the depth of their criminal conspiracy. During cross-examination, Melody's attorney tried to portray me as an ungrateful son who had refused to help his struggling family. He suggested that the car theft was justified because families should share resources and that my night in the desert was a minor inconvenience rather than a serious crime. "Isn't it true, Mr. Morrison, that your family was simply trying to teach you about the importance of putting others first?" "They weren't teaching me anything," I replied firmly. "They were committing multiple felonies to support my sister's gambling addiction and criminal activities." The attorney's strategy backfired when he asked me to describe my family's financial situation, opening the door for DA Martinez to present evidence about the credit card fraud operation. Bank records showing hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal deposits. Surveillance footage of Melody and Agent Chen using stolen credit information. My parents' construction business records, proving their participation in money laundering. "Your Honor," DA Martinez announced after the cross-examination concluded, "the prosecution rests." The defense attorneys made their closing arguments the following day, portraying my family as victims of circumstances who had made poor decisions under stress. They argued that the credit card fraud was minor compared to corporate crimes, that my parents had been manipulated by Melody's addiction, and that abandoning me in the desert was misguided family discipline, rather than criminal conspiracy. But DA Martinez's closing argument was devastating. She showed the jury photographs of credit card fraud victims, families who had lost savings, and seen their credit destroyed by my family's crimes. She played recordings of Melody laughing about my suffering in the desert. She presented evidence that my sister had been planning to expand her criminal operation to other states. "The defendants want you to believe this is about family loyalty," DA Martinez told the jury. "But loyalty doesn't mean enabling criminal behavior. Love doesn't mean abandoning your son in the desert to freeze. And family doesn't mean stealing from hard-working people to fund gambling addictions." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. Melody was convicted of conspiracy identity theft, money laundering, false imprisonment, and filing false police reports. My parents were found guilty of money laundering and conspiracy, though their sentences were reduced due to their cooperation with authorities. Judge Patricia Williams, a veteran of financial crimes cases, scheduled sentencing for the following month. She ordered pre-sentence investigations and psychological evaluations, warning my family that federal guidelines called for substantial prison time for their crimes. "The court recognizes that family relationships complicate these proceedings," Judge Williams said, "but criminal behavior cannot be excused by claims of family loyalty. The defendants have caused substantial harm to innocent victims and shown no genuine remorse for their actions. After the verdict, I met with DA Martinez and Agent Williams to discuss the sentencing phase. Melody faced up to 20 years in federal prison, while my parents could receive 5 to 8 years, depending on their continued cooperation. The investigation had led to arrests of 12 other people involved in the credit card fraud network. Your testimony was crucial for these convictions, DA Martinez said. Without your courage in refusing to surrender your car, we might never have uncovered the full scope of their criminal activities. Agent Williams handed me a victim impact statement form allowing me to describe how my family's crimes had affected my life. I would have the opportunity to address the court during sentencing, telling Judge Williams about the psychological damage caused by their betrayal and the difficulty of rebuilding trust in human relationships. Your sister's gambling debts have been traced to organized crime connections, Agent Williams explained. She owes money to criminals who don't accept bankruptcy as an excuse. Prison might actually be safer for her than the streets. As I left the courthouse, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, and the victims of my family's crimes would see their attackers punished. But I had also lost the only family I had ever known people who had chosen money and manipulation over love and honesty. The victim advocate connected me with counseling services and support groups for family members affected by criminal activities. Rebuilding my life would take time, but for the first time in years, I felt like I controlled my own destiny. My family's power to manipulate and exploit me was finally broken. That evening, I drove my Honda back toward Bakersfield, returned to me after serving as evidence in federal court. The desert highway looked different in daylight, less threatening and more beautiful. The mountains that had seemed ominous in the darkness now appeared majestic and eternal reminders that some things endure regardless of human cruelty. 6 months after the trial, I stood in the parking lot of Rosie's Diner at Don Keys to a brand new restaurant in my hand. The insurance settlement from my family's crimes combined with victim restitution funds and my savings from 7 years of faithful work had provided enough capital to purchase a small breakfast place in downtown Bakersfield. The sign above the door read Kieran's Kitchen, painted in warm gold letters that caught the morning sunlight. My sentencing victim impact statement had been cathartic in ways I never expected. Standing before Judge Williams and describing how my family's betrayal had affected me forced me to confront emotions I had been avoiding for months. The anger, the grief, the sense of profound loss, but also the relief and the hope for something better. Melody received 18 years in federal prison, the maximum sentence under federal guidelines. Judge Williams noted that she had shown no remorse for her crimes and had actually attempted to continue her credit card fraud operation from jail using other inmates' personal information. Her gambling addiction would be addressed through mandatory counseling, but her criminal behavior had been too extensive for mercy. My parents received 4 years each, reduced sentences that reflected their cooperation with federal authorities and their status as victims of Melody's manipulation. During their sentencing hearing, they had finally acknowledged the harm their actions had caused both to credit card fraud victims and to their own son. The emotional healing had been harder than the legal resolution. Counseling helped me understand that I had been raised in a dysfunctional family system where manipulation was normal and healthy boundaries were discouraged. Learning to trust my own judgment after 28 years of gaslighting required professional help and enormous patience. Sarah Chen, no relation to Agent Derek Chen, had become my anchor during the darkest months of recovery. We met in a support group for families affected by financial crimes, where her gentle wisdom and genuine empathy helped me process feelings I couldn't handle alone. She was a social worker who specialized in helping crime victims rebuild their lives, and somehow she saw potential in me that I couldn't see in myself. Your story isn't about what they did to you, Sarah had told me during one of our early conversations. It's about who you chose to become when you had the power to choose. The restaurant was my choice, my way of building something positive from the wreckage of my family's crimes. Rosie's Diner had been my sanctuary for 7 years, a place where honest work was respected and where I learned the value of treating customers like family. Now I could create that environment for other people who needed a fresh start. My staff included 3 other crime victims who had found their way to Kieran's kitchen through the Victim Advocacy Network. Maria had lost her savings to a home improvement scam. David had been targeted by employment fraud that left him homeless. Jennifer's identity had been stolen by criminals who destroyed her credit and caused her to lose her apartment. We opened each morning with a brief meeting where everyone shared their goals for the day, their challenges, and their victories. It wasn't therapy exactly, but it created a supportive environment where people who had been victimized by others could rebuild their confidence and self-worth. The breakfast crowd included many of my former customers from Rosie's Diner people who had followed me to the new location because they appreciated consistent service and genuine care. They knew my story, at least the basic outline, and their support had been overwhelming during the difficult months of legal proceedings. Kieran called out Mr. Thompson, a retired mechanic who had been eating breakfast at Rosie's for 15 years. "This coffee tastes even better when you own the place." The financial success exceeded my expectations. Honest business practices, quality ingredients, and treating employees with respect created a loyal customer base that grew steadily each month. Within 6 months, we were serving over 300 customers daily and planning to expand into lunch service. More importantly, the restaurant became a gathering place for people who understood the value of second chances. Crime victims, recovering addicts, former prisoners, immigrants building new lives, single parents struggling to make ends meet. Everyone was welcome as long as they treated others with dignity and respect. Agent Derek Chen visited occasionally, usually for lunch, when he was in Bakersfield working other cases. His undercover work in my family's case had led to a promotion within the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, where he specialized in infiltrating organized crime networks. We had become unlikely friends, bonded by the strange circumstances that had brought us together. "Your sister is doing better in prison than I expected," he reported during one visit. "The gambling addiction counseling seems to be helping, and she's working in the prison kitchen. Her counselor says she might be ready for genuine rehabilitation." I had chosen not to visit Melody in prison, a decision that felt selfish, but necessary for my own healing. Perhaps someday we could rebuild some kind of relationship, but only after she had genuinely acknowledged the harm she had caused and made real changes in her behavior. My parents were scheduled for release in 8 months, assuming good behavior and continued cooperation with federal authorities. They had written letters of apology that I hadn't been ready to read, but I kept them in a file folder for the day, when I felt strong enough to confront their contents. Sarah and I had been dating for 4 months, a relationship built on mutual understanding of trauma and shared commitment to healing. She appreciated my determination to build something positive from negative experiences, while I admired her dedication to helping other people recover from life's worst moments. "You know," she said one evening, as we closed the restaurant together, "your family thought they were breaking you that night in the desert, but actually, they were setting you free." The observation was profound and true. Being abandoned by people I had tried to please for 28 years had forced me to discover my own strength and values. Learning that I could survive without their approval had liberated me from patterns of manipulation that might have continued for decades. The victim restitution process had been completed, with funds distributed to families affected by my family's credit card fraud operation. Many of them had written thank you letters, expressing gratitude for my cooperation with federal authorities. Their words reminded me that choosing to testify against my family had helped innocent people recover from financial devastation. As the 1-year anniversary of that terrible night approached, I found myself grateful for experiences that had seemed like pure destruction at the time. The betrayal that broke my heart had also broken my family's power over me. The desert that nearly killed me had also taught me that I was stronger than I realized. Standing in my own restaurant surrounded by employees who had become chosen family, planning a future with someone who understood my journey, I realized that sometimes the worst things that happen to us create space for the best things to grow. The morning rush was beginning, regular customers taking their usual seats, while new faces discovered what Kieran's kitchen had to offer. Coffee brewing, bacon, sizzling conversations, flowing between people who understood that every day was a gift, and every fresh start was worth celebrating. I thought about the scared young man who had counted tips in a coffee can for 7 years, dreaming of something better, but never imagining how dramatically his life would change. That person had been brave enough to work double shifts and walk 4 miles in California heat. He had been strong enough to refuse his family's demands even when it cost him everything he thought he valued. Now he owned a successful business, had genuine friends who cared about his well-being, and was planning to propose to someone who saw his scars as evidence of his strength rather than reasons for pity. The journey from victim to survivor to someone who could help other survivors had been painful but transformative. The life lesson was clear: true family means mutual respect and support, not exploitation disguised as love. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish when others are trying to destroy your dreams for their own benefit. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are also trapped by their own damage, and helping them might mean setting boundaries they don't want to accept. Most importantly, forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or enabling continued abuse. You can choose to let go of anger without giving others permission to continue hurting you. Building new relationships based on honesty and respect can heal wounds that seemed permanent. The desert highway where my old life ended had become a place I drove past regularly without fear or anger. It was simply a location where one chapter concluded and another began, no more significant than any other mile of asphalt. The power to create meaning from our experiences belongs to us, not to the people who tried to break us. As I served coffee to customers who had become friends and planned a future filled with possibility rather than limitation, I understood that survival isn't just about making it through trauma. It's about discovering who you really are when all the facades are stripped away, and then building a life that honors that authentic self. Before I finish, I want to ask you something that I think about often. When people you love ask you to sacrifice your dreams for their convenience, where do you draw the line between family loyalty and protecting your own well-being? Have you ever had to choose between helping someone and enabling their destructive behavior? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult circumstances. Share it with anyone who might need to hear that recovery is possible, even from the most painful betrayals. Thank you for listening, and remember that your worth isn't determined by others' approval. You have the power to build the life you deserve, even if it means walking away from people who can't celebrate your success.